Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Chicane Cafe. Grab your favorite beverage and join your hosts, Nadia and Ashley, this week while we dive into all things Formula One. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Chicane Cafe for the Australian Grand Prix this weekend. This weekend, we're going to talk about some do not finishes from the race, the story of Carlos, the second crash of the weekend, and a little bit about Williams' decision making for the weekend as well. Hi, Ashley.
Hey, Nadia. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk about all of this.
So am I. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
And okay. Well, I guess before we go into it, we'll talk about our drinks because we are at the cafe.
We are.
Even though I'm super excited to dive into the race, still need to know what you're sipping.
Yeah. I actually went and got a new mug because I needed one in my life. It's bunny themed, so for Easter. And I got a sample pack of Zavita K-Cup pods. And I'm drinking creme brulee this morning, and it is so delicious. I highly recommend to anybody. Not sponsored.
Just enjoy.
Just enjoying. What are you drinking, Ashley?
Creme brulee is delicious also.
Yeah.
As a dessert drink, can't imagine
Anything
how delicious
with like a
that
caramel brown sugar flavor in it is like my go-to when it comes to coffee.
I think we've talked about this in the past. I feel like whenever I get something that's a flavored coffee of any sort, or like a tea that's supposed to be a certain flavor, I'm always very disappointed because I'm expecting it to taste a certain way and it never tastes the way I expect it to. So I just stick to like plain old coffee.
Do you put sugar in your coffee?
Nope. No.
Okay.
Oh,
Well,
gosh,
if anyone
no.
out there does, if you put brown sugar in instead of white sugar, it gives it much better flavor, I have found. And I don't need to use as much sugar.
Yes. I mean, I take that back. I put brown sugar in an espresso with a good little biscotti, but that's about it.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah, that's it. So since it's almost 4 o'clock here, I'm just drinking water out of my Monster Yeti cup.
Love that.
I think we have the same one.
Yeah, we
Is
totally
this
do.
true? Yeah.
Yep.
My philosophy is I drink 2 of these a day and I'm good on my hydration game. So since it's the afternoon, I'm out of the coffee game and tea game. It's a little bit too late for this grandma who goes to bed at 9 o'clock.
All about the water.
Oh, yeah. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. And speaking of going to bed early, so clearly I didn't watch the race live because it was on at midnight our time. And like I said, grandma goes to bed at 9. Did you guys watch it live?
Yes. We watched it live. It was at 10 o'clock our time.
Oh, so lucky.
So it was done by midnight, which I mean is pretty typical time for us to go to bed anyways. But yes, we watched it. We were trying to keep quiet because we are in an apartment with people around us. It was not successful. We were very loud. We were cheering. We were screaming. It was amazing.
You were screaming.
Yes. I was screaming a little bit. My partner was screaming very loud at points of the race.
Yes.
So as we get into them, I'll tell you what those points were because they were great.
I can just imagine what points they were knowing your partner and his feelings about certain teams and drivers.
Yes. I almost guarantee you could have pinpointed exactly where it was happening.
So I didn't, like I said, I didn't watch it live. And I was very challenged when I woke up in the morning. So I woke up at 5. Our dog woke us up. So I decided to get up because I couldn't go back to sleep. And so I went on socials to see if you had messaged me. And I had to put my hand over my phone, except for the opening of a tiny little right corner so that I could see if you had sent me any messages. So that was challenge number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Challenge number 2 was watching the race and trying not to wake my partner up and
Mm-hmm.
silently cheering certain things that were happening throughout the race.
It was hard
So,
this one around. There was lots going on.
well, I feel like there was a lot in the first like 10 laps, maybe 15
Yes.
laps. And then there was a big like lull. And then the
Mm-hmm.
last lap was when all the excitement happened again or ramped up
Which,
again.
super ironically, yesterday we were out at an appointment and the people were asking us what we were doing. I said, we're going to watch the race tonight, which means we'll have about 20 to 20 minutes of excitement and then just some
Yes.
chill time and then about
Yeah.
12 to 20 minutes of excitement. And that's exactly what happened.
I feel like
Called
we
it.
predicted a lot of things. You predicted the action and excitement.
Mm-hmm.
I was on a call this week for work and I was speaking with someone around who we were cheering for this weekend. And we both essentially said, well, we know Max is going to win. So who are you cheering for? And I said, I want to see Carlos win. And he said, yes, I'm a Ferrari fan, so I'd love to see Ferrari win. So it's kind of weird that like you predicted the time. I didn't predict anything, but I was saying who I wanted to win.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of a wild ride this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely it was.
Yeah. So let's dive into it.
Yes. Well, let's talk about lap 2 because that was the first excitement that happened. And
Yes.
when we were screaming at the top of our lungs a little bit. Max did not finish the race, which means he didn't win, which, I mean, I'm sorry. Sorry, Max. Sorry, Red Bull. So excited. I was so excited when his car was starting to not perform. And before that, I should say, Carlos did pass him.
Yes.
And it was after that point that Max's rear brake failed and he did not finish from the race. So that was the point. I'm assuming you probably knew. Andre was screaming at the top of his lungs.
Yes.
So excited to see what could then happen afterwards. So
absolutely. Yes.
yeah.
So same thing in our household. I think there was like silent screaming by me on the couch, arms in the air, you know, fist pumping to the fact that Carlos passed Max. Absolutely. That was the first celebration. And then you don't ever want to see anyone retire from a race, but unfortunately, when you're on the top, you know, it's easy for people to not root against you, but people want to see someone else win, right? And so that was where the excitement came from. However, when I did watch the replay, you could see the smoke was starting before Carlos passed him. So, yes. And I think in the post race, Max said that his rear brake was like stuck since as soon as the lights were out. So, I mean, his race was over from that moment, unfortunately.
And when he came, he made it around the track, but when he came in, like the fire marshals were there. The rear brake was on fire.
It exploded.
Yes.
In the
and
pit.
The other, for anyone who watched last year, I think it was, Max got out.
22 in Australia?
Are you referring to in Australia? Okay. When Perez actually got out of his car and then came back into the race like 4 laps later. I can't remember when it was.
Yes. Because he had to serve the penalty.
When Max got out, because Max got out they weren't in the garage. They were still in the pit lane. As soon as he got out in the pit lane, both of us said, Kate, he can't go back in the race. We're good. Because we were worried.
Nope, there's no way he was going back. The damage was insane. Those brakes, I didn't realize this, but those brakes can reach upwards of 1,300 degrees.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
Yeah. And so I don't think they said, or I didn't see what exactly caused it, but then I can't remember who it was. A couple laps later, someone had to come in because there was a tear off from the visor stuck in their brake.
I think it was Pierre. It was Pierre
Yes, it was
Gasly.
Pierre.
Yeah.
And so it could have been something as simple as that. Like the driver just pulls their tear off from their
Mm-hmm.
visor so they can see better. It ends up in someone's brake. And
Mm-hmm.
the other thing about this Australia track is it's not used a lot. So like even in the first practice, they were talking about how there's tons of leaves on the track and just all of that. So
it was a
who
dirty
knows?
track. Well, Max
I
was
was
saying
happy.
because I think many people were happy. And again, not for Max's misfortune, just because it's nice to see someone else win when a team is so
Yes.
dominant. Whether it was in the Schumacher era, whether it was in the Hamilton era, whether it's in this current era, it's just
Mm-hmm.
nice to see somebody else win. However, you'd think it would be a little bit more exciting without Max in the lead.
Yes.
I feel like, it kind of quieted all those haters that said, oh, it's not exciting because Max wins. Well, sorry to say, but it wasn't that exciting even if Carlos won or someone else won today.
Yeah. There was
But
still a large gap between first and second. Not
he
well,
pit.
at the end it wasn't.
He had a clean pit, like a
Yeah.
Max came right back out in first, no
Yeah.
problem, because the gap was so large. But that was also because of other people's pit strategies. But regardless,
So I actually wonder if it says something about, because it's been Max this last 2 years. It's Max's dominance. It's their car, which it is. Like it has a lot to do with Max and Red Bull's car. But does it have something to say about the regulations right now that as soon as you have fully clean air in the front, you're getting these big distances? And the other thing that I know we have talked about in previous seasons as well is the fact that they then blue flag and can pass other cars throughout, like Carlos caught cars and then was getting past them. Does that all play into the fact that it isn't as exciting of a race from P1? So I don't know. I'm interested to see what happens if, like, now that other people are potentially winning. I'd like to see it happen a couple more times to see. But it's making me question a little bit of, does it have something to do with the regulations for these cars that's allowing it to happen?
That's a good thought, Nadia, because even when he and Charles were passing the back of the pack, you could actually see their gap closing to each other. Like Charles was starting to catch up to Carlos, probably because he was in all that dirty air trying to pass these cars in the back of the pack. So it's curious, although Max seems to do it really flawlessly. So what is it that Red Bull's doing that, and we're not mechanics, we're not aerodynamicists. If someone would like to explain to us, please do so, because we'd love to know. But how come those vehicles can handle the dirty air better than anyone else? Because even when Checo is, in the midfield, he's still able to overtake, and, he still has the speed. He still has the downforce. So what is it about that car that gives them that benefit as well? Never mind the clean air that Max just takes off, 30 seconds to a minute gap.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great question. It's a good observation. I never thought of that. That was very exciting. Not very exciting, sorry. It was exciting for non-Max Verstappen fans. There's also this weird, I don't know if it's a curse or what we want to call it, but it's like Carlos has Max's number when it comes to 9 consecutive wins in a row. Yeah, 9 consecutive wins.
Yes.
Carlos has Max's number.
Yeah.
So what is that all about as well?
Well, and I think this is a good leeway a little bit into something else we're going to talk about, because the other thing that also happened last time that Carlos won and Max didn't win was George did not finish on the last lap of the race. He crashed in the very last lap, and that is exactly what
Singapore.
happened.
Yeah.
It was Singapore.
So
it was like same race, different track, different year. but very ironic.
Yes.
But it was
It,
George's
yeah.
battle with Alonso this time that the crash happened there, and last time he was battling with Lando
It
Norris,
was
I believe.
Lando. Mm-hmm.
So,
And both very like freak not accidents, but really freak maneuvers that
yeah,
happened.
yeah.
Like didn't make contact with Lando, didn't
Nope.
make contact with Fernando.
Which actually is interesting because the same thing happened. He said he was following Lando's line so closely
Mm-hmm.
that that's what caused it in Singapore, and he was following Fernando so
Really
closely
closely.
that that's what caused the crash this time around.
Yes.
That's a really great observation
Ooh.
I hadn't thought of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I does it have something to do with what was happening on track? Does it have something to do with the one driver that is the common denominator in both situations? Because for Nat, of course, like George was following him for laps, he was getting
Mm-hmm.
closer,
Mm-hmm.
and then Fernando, from what the data has said, based off of what people have shared, he braked longer in that corner than typical, which means
Mm-hmm.
from George's perspective, when he came up behind him, he went from a half a second gap to like right on his tail, and that's
Yes.
what caused him to spin out, hit the wall. George actually ended up on his side. A little
Mm-hmm.
scary, but he was okay.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was fine. So he was actually called to the stewards and handed down a 20-second penalty. Fernando does not agree with. Um,
He handled it
Basically,
well, though. I would say
yeah,
he was very mature about it. He doesn't
yeah,
agree with it, but
yep,
based on the data, you can't really
exactly.
dispute it. It was the only time that he braked earlier no, sorry, he didn't brake earlier. I think he slowed down earlier or
Mm-hmm.
downshifted earlier going into that corner. It was the only
Yeah,
time throughout the entire race. And I actually didn't realize the stewards look at things like that so closely because
yeah,
I feel like, I think Lewis Hamilton said it well. We don't really have faith in the FIA.
mm-hmm.
To make the right decisions. So the fact that they actually looked into this in that depth to understand what happened, it's probably a safety thing. I didn't realize that it was, they look at all that data
Yeah.
and you can't really dispute facts.
No, exactly. And I think which there's always some level of opinion that goes into decisions that are made on penalties. I think
Mm-hmm.
what we've talked about before, what I think needs to happen is there needs to be a level of consistency in
Yes.
penalties that are handed out that I don't think that are there. Teams, drivers have said they're not there. So how does the FIA make that happen so that there is some more trust put into it? Um, I last week was very vocal about some penalties that happened. But if there's a level of consistency that we can go back and say, okay, this has happened before, this is the
Mm-hmm.
same penalty they got, etc., that's fine because from Fernando's perspective, he was just defending his position. So how does that dictate a 20-second penalty? Well, from George's perspective, of course, yes, it was a penalty. Like something needed to happen to be looked at. So I don't know. Do you agree with the penalty? Do you think there shouldn't have been a penalty?
I was so actually, when I looked at my phone in the morning, I accidentally saw breaking, and then I saw a picture of Fernando, and I was like, oh no, I don't want to know more. So I'm sitting there watching the race, trying to understand what this breaking is, because breaking news is generally a penalty or, whatever, whether it's a drive through, a grid place penalty. I was curious. So as I'm watching the race, I'm like, where the hell is this coming from? And even after the race finished, I was like, what is going on? So the fact that, I think even the announcers had no idea what happened. Even they were saying, whoa, what happened? And, as the race finished, they also didn't really have any idea. But then as I read the FIA statement, their official statement, which also makes you feel so smart when you're reading it. Sorry. I love reading the FIA documents when they post the morning of a race, but that's besides the fact. Once it was laid out in that format, I understood, but maybe not a 20-second penalty. Maybe a 10-second penalty. And again, I don't know enough about, what constitutes which penalty, but to your point, it feels like it was a little bit extreme. Because the other thing is I don't know, was he defending? Was he, didn't he know George was, he probably knew George was that close behind him.
I think that part of, like, Fernando did say, I wasn't paying attention to the fact that George was close behind me. I think that's a little bit not real.
This is the guy that watches the screens on the side of the track to see how his teammate's doing while overtaking someone else. Don't tell me he wasn't aware of what was happening.
That's pure bull. Like, he knew that he was behind him. He knew what he was doing. Just admit it. Like, we know how you drive, Fernando. That's fine.
Yes. Don't feign ignorance in this circumstance because you don't want a penalty.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I have feelings about penalties when it comes to things that are what I say, like I said yesterday, that are like more team penalties, right? Versus driver penalties. So I'm not fully versed in like the driving penalties yet, because sometimes I'll watch an overtake or I'll watch a pass and I'm like, were they on the apex or weren't they? So I'm still kind of getting used to what's legal, what's not legal. But what I agree with you on, Nadia, is there's a lack of consistency of when penalties happen, what the handout, like what the penalty length is. All of that. I think there needs to be more consistency.
Well, I was just thinking too, penalty length. Like, I've been watching the actual races for, I think, 2 years now. This is the third year I'm watching the full season. And the number of penalties that are handed out that aren't 5 seconds or more than that is insane this year. Like, usually it's always a 5-second penalty, sometimes a 10 if it's like you've already gotten this penalty once or twice and this is now your third time getting the same penalty. Sometimes it goes up. But what is causing them to give out all of these 10 and 20-second penalties all of a sudden? And it doesn't seem like it's something that, like, the teams were informed of, even like, oh, we're going to be harsher on penalties this year, because all of them are like, why are we getting 10 seconds when this maybe would be a 5?
But wasn't there the whole thing about like increased penalty, penalty? Was it just around fines, or was it around
fines?
All penalties. Okay.
It was just fines, that the driver fine is increased this year. I think it was up to like $1 million or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I wonder if they're doing it with
seconds.
I wonder if they're doing it with all, though.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to know, but the fact that the teams don't seem to be aware of it just puts another level of, like, the FIA needs to be open and transparent and consistent.
Yes.
And they are currently none of those things, which is where that lack of trust and concern comes from. I mean, people who have said it, and I think any fans who are watching the sport too. I think with Fernando's, I went back and forth on the penalty for Fernando, and I think coming down to listening to Fernando and talking about this potentially being a defense move, if we're going to start penalizing drivers for driving differently when there's someone behind them trying to catch their spot than when they're driving by themselves, like, I don't know, where does that stop then? Like, if you can't drive differently because someone, like, you're defending from another position, what can you do?
I feel like it was only looked at this with this much scrutiny because there was an accident.
True.
I feel like that's the only reason why they actually looked into it. And it probably has something to do with the potential of, was it something on the track? Was there a safety issue? Like, was there a freak something that we need to address as the FIA or even for the team to understand what happened? So I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt here, but I think they probably were looking into it from that perspective because there was an accident that came from it.
Yeah. Okay.
Otherwise, I don't think they would have even batted an eye, to be honest. I mean, how many times, sorry to call him out, but like, how many times does Yuki make some really like dicey passes or defensive plays? And you hear the announcer saying like, "Oh, that was quite the move," or like, "Oh, look at Yuki," but nothing comes of it because it's clean, not clean per se, but there's no major incident that happens because of it.
And I think, like, I'm not saying it's an easy line to define of where do you penalize and where do you not, because we have to find this balance of driver safety and like something like this being investigated more because there was a crash. It could have been a lot worse. Everyone's fine. That's great. Like battling between that and having really great defensive or offensive drivers out there on the course, like fighting for positions, because that's what we love to see. That's what gives some great action. And why I think the battle in the, not even necessarily the top 5 teams this year, but the back 5 teams is so interesting because we have some really great drivers who are willing to make the move, take a risk, and just fight for it. Where I think we saw Max more on TV this time than we did when he's in a race because they showed him consistently walking between media tents when he was disqualified or taken out.
DNF,
so it's interesting. So like an interesting balance that I don't know if they'll ever find a great thing for, but I don't want to lose the driver's ability to fight on the track.
I don't think you will. I think it was just because it was such a freak. Like, almost like the whole, like when Danny broke his wrist because he was trying to avoid, was it Oscar? I think he was trying to avoid Oscar. And I think it was kind of like one of those situations where they had to really look at it and see, all right, what actually happened here, although we all knew what happened. Okay, so we talked about, so we have a DNF. We had another DNF during the race.
Yes.
I'm shocked we didn't have another WDC. It was Max.
It's WDC.
A world driver champion.
Oh, gotcha. Acronyms are my strong suit.
I'll be sure to say the whole thing next time.
That's okay. I'll just ask you what it is and then we can explain to everybody.
Yeah,
WDC equals World Drivers Champion.
Yes.
You were surprised another one didn't crash out from the race?
Or
have their car fail?
Yeah. We were 2 for 3, I think, on the track.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just Fernando.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Okay. So Lewis did not finish the race. Engine failure. And just he was talking after, and it wasn't like a slow thing. It was just all of a sudden he was driving and it just like
you heard
out.
It power down. Like it just, you heard it stop working.
Yes, which is so crazy. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know, like what does that say about Mercedes and their car development? Their
power units though. Period.
Yes.
Because Fernando was saying again, I don't know if this was part of his defense in his play with George there, but he was also saying he was having issues with his power unit too. And they're all driving Mercedes, aren't they? Yeah. They're all, I'm shocked that McLaren's not having issues. Williams, well, it was the brakes yesterday, but regardless, their power units have not been performing well this year.
Yeah.
So hate to say it, but this is one that is not of Lewis's fault. However, did he put this bad energy out into the world? Because I feel like he's the kind of guy who's like, he's not like juju. Like, he doesn't believe in like good juju and bad juju, but I feel like he's the type of guy that who does his affirmations, who puts energy out into the universe and it gets replicated or responded to. Like, I feel like he's that kind of guy. So did he put a lot of bad energy out into the universe and the universe just said, you know what? You think this car sucks? You want to see how bad it is?
We're gonna shut down on you.
Yeah, and now you don't have a car to drive, sir.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's not actually what happened, but sometimes when you put the energy out in the universe, it will respond.
Right? And I mean, this was pure just engine failure, but I would love to know more about the car setup and the differences, because George's car was fine. He was fighting, he was pushing, he was able to do that. And Lewis's again was the one who conked out. And it seems like more and more things, whether they're luck, whether it's the car, whether it's driving, like, just seems to be not favoring Lewis in any way and favoring George. So what's causing that? I would love to know. I don't know if we'll ever know. I mean, it could be the universe. It could be just his
pissed off mechanic.
I didn't say it. Who knows?
Nobody would do that. But...
No, we're just totally kidding.
Yes.
But I don't think I can say, like, we were talking about Lewis and his outlook and where's his head at right now. I don't think we can necessarily say this is related to that in any way, but it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how he comes into next weekend, his confidence level and ability, because this is a sport where they're driving 300k plus an hour on a track. So if your confidence isn't 100%, you're not 100% confident in your car, it's going to affect your split second reaction time. So I don't know. If he comes out and is amazing in the next race, I will take it all back. But I just think this is going to be another notch in the it's not going great for Lewis year.
Yes.
Which I think leads us a little bit into talking about who won the race.
Yeah.
Because Lewis is taking the seat of the race winner, the only person to win other than Red Bull all of last season and now all of this season so far. I know we're only 3 races in, but Carlos won the race. So exciting.
So happy for him.
Yes.
Sorry.
And he had his appendix out last week. It's been 16 days.
Yes.
I saw since he had his appendix out.
Yes.
And he won the race.
Yes. And showed up not just for the race, but showed up well throughout FP 1, 2, and 3, qualifying. Yes, Charles showed up better in FP. Like, let's not get upset. Like, we're not saying Charles isn't good, but Carlos delivers when he needs to. And he had the pace. He had the pace over Checo as well. Like, Checo could not make up. Well, he made up some spots, but like he was struggling. He was struggling in 5th.
Yeah.
In 5th. Yeah, 5th.
And he was able to pass the Astons, which is fine. Like he made it past Yuki, like all of these people, right? But he couldn't keep pace with McLaren or with Ferrari.
Yes. Well, and I think this goes back to what you were saying about the clean air and that easy ride of Red Bull, or the easy ride that Red Bull has. So Checo received a 3-place grid penalty, and he just couldn't seem to make it up. So when Max is out front by 20 seconds on his teammate. And to your point, that's all. It's still clean air for Checo. And
Yeah.
it's all the guys behind him that are really challenged because they're getting his dirty air, and then it turns into this DRS train. And, you know, yeah. So does that go to show, you know, I don't know, is Carlos going to be the one to get that Red Bull seat next year? Because
Yeah.
we know Danny's not, we know Yuki's not. We know Checo has he's not on the chopping block, but Red Bull hasn't been shy to say they're keeping their options open for that second seat.
Yeah.
Is this a Toro Rosso 2015 pairing again? It would be interesting to see, and I don't know. I would love to see Carlos in that Red Bull.
Yeah.
Because if he can do this with a Ferrari,
And just the fact that, like, there was a lot going on for Carlos, right? He was back. He'd basically been in bed for 2 weeks, comes out, does this race weekend. It obviously took a little bit of a toll on him physically, but he was still making strategy decisions in the car. Like,
yeah.
oh, we should maybe try this. Or like, he has such an amazing, from my perspective, an amazing mind and outlook when he's in the car, that he's not just thinking about, I'm going to drive as fast or as hard as I can. He's thinking about everybody else on the track. Like, it's such strategy, which I love. And that's why I love Carlos so much. And there's so much talk about, because he doesn't have a seat, is he going to go to Aston Martin? Is he going to go, like, whoever that might be? And a lot of talk seems to be around him going to one of these, like, midfield teams, which makes no sense to me. He needs a top seat in a car. He's proved it. He's more than proved it. I think the question as the year goes on that I keep asking myself is, did Ferrari make the right decision? We won't know until next year. Did Ferrari make the right decision keeping Charles over Carlos? Or did they make the right decision in bringing Lewis to the team and splitting up Carlos and Charles, was my question this weekend. Because from what I'm seeing in performance of the two of them, yeah, the car isn't great for Lewis, but he's still not outperforming his teammate. So regardless, Carlos is not going to be at Ferrari, but he needs a top seat, which means I feel like he needs to either go to Red Bull. I think he could do amazing things, him and Max together, or he needs to go to Mercedes.
I don't think, as much as our reel popped off and it was funny and everyone thought it was hilarious with Toto going to sign Carlos, I don't think that's the right team for him. I think they're, what does my husband liken them to? Kind of like the New York Yankees, where it's like you go there to retire kind of thing. It's a good team and they have a good car, but if you want to continue performing at a very, very high level, you go to the Red Bull, right? Yeah, I think Red Bull's really the only option for him. And honestly, based on his performance this year so far alone, I know we're only 3 races in, but I think he has his pick, right? He can choose. I think he's in a position where he can choose, and it's not the other way around, right?
Yes.
Like you say, like some of the midfield teams, or the midfield drivers, they're kind of stuck. Like, okay, I'll go with someone who I can sign with or who has an available seat, right? Versus a Carlos who can say, well, I want to drive for Red Bull for 1 year. And that's the other question is, if he goes to one of these teams, how long will it be for? Because we've spoken about this in the past. He's likely going to go to Audi because of his dad's relationship with Audi. But his dad also has a strong relationship with Red Bull too, because his dad has both of those sponsors.
Yeah.
So, and Audi's probably not going to have a great team out of the gate. So what does that mean for Carlos? Is he going to be okay to be there as a developer, right? As part of a development year or two, or does he want to be in that really strong seat until Audi is ready and is a competitor?
And I think it'd be so great because he has that strategic mind and he's like talks about it so great. I think it would be amazing. It might be a step back for him with however, because we have no idea how Audi's going to perform when they come in, what it's going to look like. But it would be amazing to see Carlos as the main seat in a team, leading the team, be able to take them from not doing great to winning championships. Like, that would be such an amazing story, and I'd be cheering him along every second of the way for him to get there. So I could see him strategically deciding that, you know what, I'm okay with not necessarily winning the championship this year, knowing I can help develop, we can build this car around me and my driving style and get to where we want to be, which makes it very interesting of, are they going to do, is he going to just sign somewhere for 1 year? Does it matter to him if it's a Red Bull or if it's not?
I think, yeah. I think as an elite athlete at the level that he's performing, it would be silly for him not to sign with a really strong team. Because I feel like you lose something. I feel like Lewis is losing that this year. You know,
Yes.
like when you can still be competitive, and I think they're elite athletes because they are competitors. Well, that was a really weird statement, but like competition is in their veins regardless of where they go. But he's kind of peaking right now. So I don't think he would want to go anywhere that he couldn't continue that momentum before stepping into Audi. There's also a rumor that Adrian Newey might go to Audi.
Ooh, that would be interesting. Adrian Newey and Carlos on a team together. 2026 is looking very interesting.
Yes.
I can't wait.
It feels like contracts mean nothing now. Like, oh, this person signed until 2028, but this is their exit clause.
Right?
Okay.
Exactly. They've got it all worked in there.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. And I think the other thing that's working really well for Ferrari in general this year, which we've kind of joked about in the past, is their strategy is actually working now. Whether it's a tire strategy, I was thinking that when there was, plan A, when they were talking about plan A, plan B, when to box, when not to box. And what's happening is the engineers are really listening to the drivers. Whereas in the past, as much as I love Mattia and, his hair and his glasses and his, fun Italian personality, I truly believe that they're listening to the drivers more than they ever have and are letting them call the shots based on what they're feeling in the car. And it seems to be working for them very well.
And I think that all comes down to their team principal. Like, he's leading the team in the right way. This is his first year of, like, they developed the car together and worked through all of that, right? So I think that was a great choice to put him in as their team principal, and I can't wait to see what happens. But I also hope Carlos beats them in whatever car he's in, just because I think he deserves to.
Well, you don't let a driver that strong go. And yeah, it would be great to see him win in whatever car he goes into as well.
Yeah.
But then it's the whole, if he goes to Red Bull, will he be able to win with Max as his teammate? But I don't know. I might be the only one standing out here on my own feeling this way. But I actually think if Carlos was in a Red Bull, he could actually put up a fight against Max for that driver championship. I don't know.
I agree. I think it could be very interesting, that battle between the two of them, with Carlos's strategic mind in that car, his ability to push and fight. I think my only question about him going to Red Bull next year is Red Bull willing to sign a 1-year deal with a driver? Like, do they think that Danny is going to be ready in that time period? Do they think another driver is going to be someone that they will sign? Like, are they going to sign someone who's not even in Formula One right now, like coming up in F2? I don't know. I would be a little bit surprised if they sign knowing it's a 1-year deal with a brand new driver in there.
I feel like, I don't know, my feeling is I feel like Christian would be okay with that as a second seat, but not his main seat.
Yeah.
Because he was so ready to let Checo go last year. I feel that
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't want commitment in that second seat because he just wants to continue winning. And if someone's not performing, I don't know, a couple weekends out of the whole season, he just wants to go. So again, I don't know, but I feel like Christian would be okay with a shorter contract from that perspective because it leaves his options open. He seems to be a guy that likes his options open.
I think regardless, like we're all talking about Carlos's contract. There's so many drivers who still don't have contracts this year. But honestly, I don't think the second round of silly season is going to start until Carlos signs a contract.
Yes.
And then everybody else will be like, okay, we're going to sign. We need to get our people in place now.
Yes.
So we're kind of waiting for that moment. And whether it be in the summer when silly season typically happens or it waits until the end of the year, I think everyone's just waiting for Carlos to sign somewhere, which is a great position for him to be in. But I also think it like his interview this weekend was kind of funny because they said
cute.
Like, this is a great add to your resume. Like you won again. And he was joking about it and then was like, yeah, but I hope I'm driving next year. And in my mind, I'm like, if you're not driving next year, everyone's gone crazy because there's no way you shouldn't be signed with some team somewhere.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, and it was cute when Charles was kind of like poking fun at him. Like, I'm sure team principals have been speaking with him, and he got so funny.
Oh.
His reaction was so childlike. It was so cute. Oh my God. Yes. So regardless, Carlos should have his pick next season. Yeah. Okay.
The other thing I just want to mention briefly, because I have to, because they're my team, is after the crash, after George crashed out, Nico for Haas was already in points. He was in 10th.
Yes.
But then after George crashed, both Nico and Kevin got in the points. The first double points finish for Haas since 2022 in July. And just to see like AO on the radio or on the social media after being so excited and the whole team just being so excited, I'm just really proud of the team. Like, they're all focused on race pace and getting to where they need to be. So for them to get a double, for Kevin to get points after the amazing run he did last week for Nico, I'm sorry for George, you didn't get points, but very happy that Haas got 2 points in there. And then they were tied with RB for about 20 seconds in number 6 in the Constructors Championship. But after Fernando got the 20-second penalty, Yuki got went up in the points as well. So they're in 7th now.
It's okay.
But they have some points, and every point's so valuable this year.
And there's still 21 races left in the season. So
very true.
There's lots of time. Australia is always good to Haas, though. I feel like they tend to perform well in Australia. So congratulations on your double points.
Very much. Thank you. Yes, my personal double points.
Yeah, they're all for you, Nadia. They think of you when they get them. They're like, we need to make Nadia proud. Yeah, speaking of points, we had this great conversation yesterday about the controversial decision that Williams made and their car and their seat and who was driving which car, which driver they were sacrificing for the weekend. And after seeing Alex's performance today, I'll let you take a sip of your coffee there. Do you still disagree with James's decision, or do you feel any differently now?
I still feel like I disagree with the decision. I think the outcome, I'm a little bit ambivalent on the outcome of what happened because he made it around Albon. He didn't crash the car. The car's in full pieces, which was my concern, was that
Yes.
the fact that he's crashed twice in the same corner, basically in back-to-back sessions, even though they were a year apart, was a concern about his confidence level. So Albon did good. He didn't get points. That's fine. So it was a fine decision. And I think James did what he felt like he needed to in the moment. But the part I still don't agree with is the fact that now Logan's confidence level might be affected moving forward. Like they'll have 2 cars for the next race. Hopefully everything goes good and they stay in one piece. So then the next weekend or the weekend after, they'll have a backup chassis in case something happens. But the fact that Logan didn't get his chance to race this weekend when, like they said, he's a high performance athlete. All he does is want to be out on the track. I know it was hard for Logan. It was hard for the whole team. But I mean, other people who were race drivers or previously race drivers were like, I wouldn't have taken that with as much maturity as Logan did in that moment. So I still would have gone with Logan. We don't know what would have happened if they went with Logan. Who's to say? But my feeling about wanting him to do really well this year and put a good challenge on Alex is still there. So I went from being ambivalent to Logan to I'm now cheering for Logan for the rest of the year.
That's quite a roller coaster, Nadia, in 24 hours.
I follow people.
Yes.
More than teams. Like I love McLaren because I like Zach Brown and I want them to do really well, right? So I also love an underdog story. I'd love to see
You sure do.
Logan be able to do some good this year.
Yeah, get a few points even.
Yeah.
Or out points.
Just something. Don't get 20th or 21st because Ollie Behrman's now in there in the Drivers' Champion. That's all.
Yeah, just get a few points. Get a few points. Well, I mean, with how Alpine and Sauber are performing this year, he may be able to get up there. So we'll see. But yeah, it was a good race regardless. A little bit boring in the middle, but lots of action at the beginning and the end. So I'm looking forward to the next one. Japan. We're in Japan in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah.
It's going to be a long 2 weeks, and North American fans are really going to feel this one.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I think it's on at like 3 a.m. for us here in Central.
I'm double checking right now because it is a late one. Oh, it's not bad for me. It starts at 11 p.m. to 1, which means it's 1 to 3 a.m. for you, which is very late. I will be up for the race. I will just say that. And I will try and keep all of the spoilers and excitement to myself until you wake up and watch the race.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I feel like that's why everything good happened in the race today, though. Because I feel like when I watched it, how do I say this? I feel like I was very, what's the word where you don't care either way?
Ambivalent?
Ambivalent, maybe that's the word. I was very ambivalent when I turned it on at 5 o'clock in the morning. Like I thought, I'm just going to watch Max win another race. Nah, there's going to be other stuff that happens. No big deal. Yep. But wow. And then I thought, you know why? It's because I didn't watch it live.
So if Max doesn't win next week in Japan, we might have to have a discussion about do you watch the races live from now on? Because I'm all about the sports mojo. I'm the type of person, I also love hockey. Yes. If I watch a hockey game that's recorded, I will cheer just as hard, even though the decision has already been made on who wins the sport or the game. Yeah.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, we'll talk about it. I can't guarantee anything because when the races are on again at 9 and 10 a.m., How the heck am I supposed to fill that time knowing the race is on right then?
I was just kidding.
Okay, thank God. I was starting to panic.
No, you're always allowed to watch the races. I would never stop that.
Well, I might stop that though, personally, if it comes to the point where like Max isn't winning. Oof. But we all know that Max generally doesn't win because of a vehicle or car failure, not because of his performance. So
yeah,
I doubt Red Bull's going to have 2 weekends in a row of and vehicle failure.
Right?
Yeah. Maybe someone got fired. Who knows? But yeah.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I doubt it.
We won't know.
I doubt it. I feel like nobody gets fired from that team. All right. So Nadia, we'll talk to you in 2 weekends for Japan. And thanks again. And yeah, we'll see you in the cafe in 2 weeks.
Sounds good. We'll see you all then. Thank you for joining us this week at the Chicane Cafe. Follow us on Instagram at the Chicane Cafe. Our podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts. And for a video version of our pod, watch us on our YouTube channel at the Chicane Cafe. And remember to hit that subscribe button.